Looking forward to talking with everyone today. As Kevin alluded to, heavy lacrosse vibes in the chat today, and we're excited about it. We have both of our men's and women's lacrosse programs well represented, and we're going to start off with, I guess, a bit of a digital face-off here, as our coaches will tell us a little bit about their journey and how they've gotten involved in the sport that they love and how they've gotten to where they are right now. And we'll start first with Jenna Dingler from the women's lacrosse program.
Well, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today in this space. It's so great to be here with all of you. This was definitely an interesting start to my career at Manhattan, but a special one to say the least. Just a little background on me. I really fell in love with the game of lacrosse back in high school. I played at Washington Township High School in New Jersey. Jersey represent for anybody here. I knew I wanted to play in college by my sophomore year of high school. And at that point, I was recruited to play at Lock Haven University out in Pennsylvania, a strong Division II school. I really didn't know what to expect out of my experience playing at Lock Haven, but it was definitely far better than I could have ever imagined. During my time at Lock Haven, we won 2 conference championships and made it to the NCAA national championship game twice. We played on the biggest stage possible for us, and it was a really incredible experience. And a lot of what I learned on that journey made me want to become a collegiate coach today. So much of what I value now stems from my experiences as a player that was a part of a successful program. So I jumped into coaching right after college, where I started my career as an assistant coach at Caldwell University while getting my master's degree in exercise science from Montclair State University, still staying in Jersey for a little while. I was an assistant for 1 year before I took over the program as head coach for 2 years. And then following my 3rd year at Caldwell, I had an amazing opportunity to become a Jasper. And now here I am, 1 year in, technically only 7 games in. But to say the least, we're really excited to be here. We started out strong this year. We showed growth in different areas in each one of our games. But I really want to acknowledge the incredible group of young women that welcomed me into this program. We learned a lot as a whole this year, and I'm really excited to continue on with the valuable knowledge that we gained this year. So I'm really excited to be here.
Excellent. Thanks, Jenna. And as a fellow New Jersey native, love all the Jersey talk. It's great. Let's have more of that as we continue on. Now we'll swing it over, as Jenna mentioned, getting ready to start her 2nd season after, of course, this first season was cut short. John Odierna with the men's lacrosse program in his 5th year with the team, but 2nd as the program's associate head coach. John, just fill us in on your journey and how you've gotten to Manhattan College here today.
Sure. Greg, first of all, I'm going to try to make you not regret asking me questions. I have a tendency to be a little long-winded. Coach Kelleher likes to put the shot clock on me when I talk. So I'm going to do my best, but no promises. I am a Long Island person, so I have to live up to that. Big thank you to K-Ross, Kevin, Kelly, Whitney, Greg, you guys for making this all possible. Obviously, without you guys, we don't have as much of a voice and as much of a reach. So I think that's really cool that you're focusing on us a little bit and letting us tell our story. About me, like I said, grew up on Long Island, Cold Spring Harbor, which I'm pretty sure babies are born with lacrosse sticks in their hands here. I was a little bit late to start. I started in 6th grade when all my friends started in 1st. Again, really like a blue blood of high school lacrosse in the country, Cold Spring Harbor. And for me, I kind of became a student of the game quickly because I had to, and I think that kind of led into my desire to coach. I remember sending my 6th grade coach clips of Syracuse lacrosse suggesting plays, and he was like, "Why is the 6th grader sending this to me?" And I think that's where my love of coaching was started. Had the chance to compete and win a state championship. It was the first one we ever won, which was pretty cool, with some of my best friends I grew up with. Pivoting to college, I had some Division I interests, but decided to take my talents down to South Central Pennsylvania to Gettysburg College and play for Coach Jancic. He's actually the 2nd winningest coach in college lacrosse history. So he's a big-time guy, and it was pretty cool to get down there and experience a whole different part of the world with a bunch of guys that are now my best friends, and got a chance to play for a national championship, made the NCAA tournament all 4 years I was there, which was really cool. And Coach Jancic, kind of interesting about him, he's got over 20 guys that are currently head coaches, assistant coaches, administrators across high school, college, Division I, Division II, Division III, including the head coach at Johns Hopkins is a Gettysburg alum. So there's a pretty rich coaching tree that's come from that school. And one thing I learned from Coach Jancic that segues me into my coaching career was you can't grow in your comfort zone. And so my first job out of college was I headed to the Great White North of Waterville, Maine, to coach at Colby College. My coldest winter was spring in Maine. And what was kind of cool there was the head coach was a guy that coached me at Gettysburg. He knew I wanted to get into it, and he kind of brought me right in. And for those that don't know, Colby is in the NESCAC, which in Division III lacrosse is like the SEC football of Division III lacrosse. So it was trial by fire as a 22-year-old, basically handed the keys to the defense and, figure it out, make it happen for us. And that first year, we actually tied the program record for wins, which was kind of cool. But then I learned in year two the harsh realities of coaching. We were 6-9 with 8 one-goal losses. So got to learn some hard lessons there, and then headed back south to Jersey. Jenna, Greg, here comes some Jersey talk for you, to Stevens Tech, which I know academically is a little bit of a local rival for us as a college. And I got to work with Gene Peluso, who, again, tremendous coaching tree, including the head coach at Princeton, is a guy that I actually filled his spot at Stevens. He's now the head coach at Princeton. Learned a ton. It was a really cool atmosphere working there. Really grateful to the two guys that gave me an opportunity to coach before I got to Manhattan. Obviously, I wouldn't be sitting here without them and some of the things they gave me. And then kind of moving along and working with Coach Kelleher, a guy that was maybe my first friend in recruiting way back when. I learned to introduce yourself to as many people as possible and got to hang out with him. And I believed in his vision when we got to Manhattan. It was a program that was needed a little bit of work, and we were underperforming, but obviously new investment and things like GPAC and a new field and everything Marianne and the administration have done made us really excited to get here, and it's been pretty cool. One metaphor I'll use now so I don't save it for later is it's kind of like making a U-turn with an ocean liner. It doesn't happen right away, but in 5 years we've started to see the fruits of our labor a little bit. So it's been kind of cool, and obviously pumped to be here. And Greg, I told you I'm going to give you a long answer, so be careful if you want to call on me.
Good to know, John. I'll keep that in mind going forward. I'm trying to just sift through all the great nuggets you've dropped in us here just in your opening salvo. So thank you for that. Cold Spring Harbor, well represented. Lacrosse, Billy Joel, we get it. Let's stay on Long Island though, as we go back to the women's program, and a Long Island native in Jill May in her second year, much like Jenna, getting ready to start that second year with the women's lacrosse program. And Jill, just kind of give us a little bit of your journey and how you've ended up here alongside Jenna with the program.
Thanks, Greg. First and foremost, I'm definitely not going to talk as much as John Odierna did. I can kind of just ease my way into it a little bit, but my name is Jill May, and I am the assistant women's lacrosse coach here at Manhattan. Just like J.O., I stemmed from Long Island. I'm from a small town called Babylon. I did also get to the lacrosse game a little bit later, and my dad didn't know what lacrosse was, and once he found out what lacrosse was, he was so excited that my brother and I jumped into it, because I think Jenna can vouch for me on this, that my dad is definitely the biggest lacrosse person in this room right now. So shout out to Don May if you are listening. I attended St. John the Baptist High School, which is in West Islip, New York. So I competed in the Catholic League. And as I was getting recruited in high school, I winded up heading my way to the Midwest in Columbus, Ohio. I attended the Ohio State University, where I was there for 1 year. And then I decided to transfer to a small Division I school in New York called LIU Brooklyn, which is also a little bit of a rival for us. Same small school atmosphere, just like Manhattan. So I'm very excited that I'm here because it reminds me a little bit of my playing days at LIU. When I graduated with my undergrad, I was a little bit on the fence of should I continue my education or if I should jump right into a career. So I decided to become a graduate assistant while pursuing my master's degree in special education at a Division II school in Cleveland, Ohio called Notre Dame College. I was a grad assistant there for 2 years, and then I became the head coach after my second year. And I think Jenna actually has me beat on this. I don't know if she was 22 or 23 when she became a head coach for the first time. I was 23. Now, I definitely have a little bit of a different route than the two other coaches in here, because I went from a grad assistant, jumped right into a head coaching role, and then now I am very excited to be back in an assistant coaching role, because it's just been a great journey learning with Jenna and the administration here at Manhattan. And I'm really excited for what the future has for us for the Lady Jays.
Excellent. Thanks, Jill. Thanks, coaches, for those introductions and kind of explaining your journey. And that'll be a nice table setter for the rest of our conversation here. As Kevin mentioned at the top, I definitely want to hear from everyone here in the crowd. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat function, and we'll get to those as we go along. We've got a lot of folks checking in. Shout out to Jamie joining us from Edmonton, Canada. That's pretty cool. So great to have a nice wide and diverse audience here with us. We'll now turn to some of our questions here, and we'll swing it back to Jenna to kick this off. But you're all coaches. You all played. That doesn't necessarily mean just because you were a strong player that you love to play the game that you'll want to be a coach. That'll be something that'll speak to you. So we'll go through each of the three coaches, starting with you, Jenna. What was it about this sport that made you want to coach it, and why have you enjoyed being a coach so far?
I mean, that's such a great question. Definitely get asked a lot, but I really just truly love the game of lacrosse. It's taught me so many valuable lessons over the years, and you know, I've built so many friendships and relationships throughout the sport, and I really wanted to share that love for the game with future players. I had really passionate coaches growing up, and they definitely instilled that love for playing in me. And over the last few years, I've definitely realized that I'm in coaching for so many more reasons than just the X's and O's of the actual game. And like I said, I just really want to instill that same love for this game and for growing as an individual to our future players and our future Jaspers.
John, you talked a bit about your journey and kind of trial by fire, getting into some of the most competitive lacrosse in the area. You'll find out quick if you like it or not when it's that difficult. What made you pursue it, and what's made you stick with it?
Sure. Yeah, I think one thing that was really cool, like I said, you know, I felt like I was kind of a quote unquote student of the game to try to catch up with my buddies growing up. But I think one thing that was really cool was it was something I always wanted to do, but I didn't realize all that it took. You know, when you're a player, you see practice and maybe you see film and maybe you see your coaches at lifts. And stuff like that, but you don't see all the other stuff that goes into it. Like literally everything we do, there's a purpose behind it. And I think that was one of the first things I learned working on a 2-person staff my first year in a really competitive atmosphere, was just how much goes into everything, how much planning. So it was pretty cool to take my lumps and learn some lessons off the field, probably more so than on the field initially. And then it was really cool to start to see the development of relationships with guys. You know, I still keep tabs with some of the guys that I coached my first year at Colby, first 2 years that I coached or at Colby. I was 2 weeks older than the oldest guy on the team my first year. So, you know, those guys check in on me every once in a while. We still stay in touch. It's really cool. So I don't even know if I answered your question entirely, but, you know, that was definitely a big part of why I love doing it and why I'm still doing it.
No, that's great. And speaking of age, right, both Jenna and Jill talked about being not long out of college and then getting into the coaching game. Jill, you had the experience of being a graduate assistant while coaching. And when you're in that role, you're obviously coaching, but you're also working on your academics. But then once you finish that, you kind of step out on that ledge of like, now my identity is going to be a coach. What was it about your early experience as a coach that led you to want to pursue this full time going forward?
Great question, Greg. I think that everybody that was a player in college and they're making the transition into coaching, they realize all the hard work that you put in as a student athlete. And if you can get it done as a student athlete when you're putting in all the hours in the classroom and then going onto the field and, you know, succeeding there, I was just really excited to kind of learn how to succeed without the academic standpoint and kind of put all of my time into coaching and, you know, kind of learn new ways and constantly learn about all the different skills or practices, drills that you could do and kind of transition all of that into coaching. And with that being said, falling in love with the game, like Jenna also stated as well, you know, when you just love the game and you're influenced by so many people, I think transitioning into the coaching role is definitely one of the most, it's like the best feeling in the world, I could say.
Excellent. If you're just joining us, we're talking with members of the Manhattan College men's and women's lacrosse staffs. And now we're talking about the premise of what makes up a good coach. What are some of the characteristics that make up a good coach? Any coach in any sport will tell you that they learn from other coaches, whether they played for a coach, they observed coaches, they pick up stuff along the way and maybe want to make that part of what they are as a coach. Jenna, as you're getting into your coaching career and as you continue on, what are the things that you liked in other coaches that you wanted to be when you became a coach? And then how do you continue to build on that?
As I had mentioned in my previous answer, was passion. I mean, that's the number one thing that I got to see in coaches that I had that really, really fueled my fire to then become a coach and bring that with me everywhere. One of my first emails from my coach at Lock Haven, at the bottom, her signature said, "Passion has a funny way of trumping logic," which I know is a very popular quote. And I have taken that with me everywhere because it's so true in my eyes. You might not be the most funded program. You might not have the fanciest uniforms, but if you're passionate about what you're doing and you're putting that passion into your work every single day, you will be successful and you will be rewarded. So I truly believe in that. And that's what I think is a characteristic of a good coach that I have had in previous years. And I really try to instill that in my players as well, with what they're doing every day. But I also think a good coach is goal-oriented and organized. I know Jill and I are very organized, sometimes maybe too organized, but everything is done for a reason. And a lot of times if we're asked the question, why are we doing this? We're ready to answer that. And we're ready to provide our players with an answer for that. So, it's really important for a coach to connect with their players and build those relationships individually, especially when you have a larger team, a team of 30. I think it's really important for a coach to be able to individually coach their players as well. So those are just some characteristics that I think are really important for coaches to have.
Jill, as Jenna was talking about the women's program, since you're part of that staff too, we'll kind of hop over to you, but you've had this unique experience of being a head coach, but now being in that assistant role. You obviously played for two different programs at the college level, high school, travel. So you've been around a lot of coaches like the three coaches here. What do you learn and have learned from those coaches? I'm sure you're learning things from Jenna, things that you want to bring to the table in your role as a coach.
Sure. I think that being approachable and adaptable are two big things that are, the best definition of a good coach. I remember being younger. I'm going to just give her name right now, Shannon Smith. She's the head women's lacrosse coach at Hofstra. She was my trainer when I was younger, and then she was also my travel lacrosse coach. And the game is constantly changing, and she was always there to be able to ask questions too. And she was also very adaptable, where she was able to implement different things in game-like scenarios. And when I started interviewing with Jenna last October, when I was fortunate enough to get this opportunity for Manhattan, we were talking about this, and Jenna was saying how, her big thing is being approachable and adaptable. So Jenna is actually somebody that I really look up to as, being a good coach. And I think that her and I work really well together in that atmosphere. We provide an approachable atmosphere for our student athletes to come and talk to us. But like she said, also that we get down to business and we're getting it done, but we're also adaptable when need be.
And John, over to you. You touched on some of the coaches early in your career as a player and a coach that you were able to interact with and how they benefited you. But what are some other things that you've learned along the way? Maybe some coaches that you look up to currently or ones that you've had in your past that really helped kind of form the coach you are and that you're becoming?
Sure. I mean, I think the working example was my first boss at Colby was a guy that coached me for 2 years at Gettysburg, and was the guy that he's now an athletic director at a high school, but was a guy that I sort of idolized when I got into this as far as how I wanted to present myself as a coach. So his name's Justin Domingos. He's one of my favorite people on the planet. I think one thing that he did so well, and that's so cool to me, is all the guys that I'm friends with, when I see them, they ask me about him, right? And that's the guy that they haven't talked about in years, or haven't really gotten a chance to talk about in years. So whenever I see them, they ask me, how's Coach Domingos? And to me, I think one skill he had that I always try to emulate is the way he communicated with us. And I think, to Jenna's point, to Jill's point, talking about building relationships, so much of that has to do with how you communicate. And I think it's not always what you're saying, although that is very important. It's how you're saying it and when you're saying it. And I think that's a really important skill. And a quote that I heard that I really like, that I've always sort of stuck to, is they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think that's really important because I could have the greatest schemes and techniques in the world, but if nobody wants to listen to me teach it, then it really doesn't matter, right? And I think that's so important. And I think, again, to their point, because I think Jenna and Jill hit this really well, is explaining the why, right? Explaining why you're doing it. And that was one thing Coach Domingos always did. We always knew why we were doing something, right? And if I know why I'm doing it, if it helps me help us, then I'm going to put everything I have into it. So that's one thing that I think I've always tried to adapt for our guys is give them the why, let them sink their teeth into it. If we fail, we'll reevaluate. But I promise you, you put your hardest effort into it this way, we got a pretty good chance. So I've always tried to do that. I think communicating how you do it, when you do it is really important.
Just a couple of questions in, and already all three coaches have talked about the idea of being adaptable, being approachable. This year, this current climate, there is no playbook for it. There's a coach that can tell you how it went in the past, no matter how many years they've been around, to deal with seasons being canceled, no practices, no team gatherings due to the pandemic. Everyone's really had to kind of figure it out on their own and lean on other coaches to kind of navigate this new time. Jenna, we'll start with you. What are some of the things that you've learned during this pandemic that you'll bring forward, even when things get back to normal? I imagine you've developed maybe some practices that you like and you'll want to keep going forward.
Definitely. I think, this is maybe cliche, but, we've reminded our team every day to just cherish every second that you get to play the game because, this is such an unprecedented, unexpected, nobody knew that our Sacred Heart game was going to be the last game of the season. Would they have played that game differently? We don't know, but we want them to be able to say every time they step off the field, that was the best I've ever given. Even in practices, I know that they're itching to get back out on Gaelic and, how are they going to show up after this time? I think that everyone is just going to have a totally new sense of gratitude and humility just to be able to play, especially because seniors have lost their seasons, for those that have decided not to come back. So, I really want them to be able to play every day like it is their last, as cliche as it sounds. On a more personal note, I definitely have learned to slow down a little bit. I felt very go, go, go recently. So it was nice to kind of take a step back and use the time to reflect, which is what Marianne and our administration have really been pushing us to do, is to just really take the time to reflect since we don't normally have this time. And how can we, use that time of reflection to bring back a whole new attitude into the atmosphere of the fall and whatever that may be. How are we going to be prepared to handle any future adversities that may come up? So I think that's really how Jill and I have been preparing over these last few months during the pandemic.
John, you've described previously the importance of communication and the idea that it's great you can say a bunch of things and have a bunch of plans, but if nobody listens, then what's the use? I imagine most coaches during this time have had to be stretched in different directions and learn new tasks because they can't rely on the gameplay and the practice and the results. It really is a bunch of other stuff. It's stuff like we're doing right now, right? Having a digital conversation. What's been the growth for you to try and develop new ways to still be an important part of the staff and the team?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I think it goes back to the adaptability that Jenna and Jill touched earlier, and kind of, I don't want to jump all over Jenna's point with gratitude. I think not only are the players going to be really grateful when they get a chance to compete, I think as coaches, we're going to be really grateful when we get a chance to get back on a field too. So, I think in terms of function rather than that stuff, learned a lot about Zoom in the last couple months, something I had never downloaded before. So learned a lot there. What else? Being able to get in front of our guys sort of more so than normal than this time of year. Usually at the end of the year, you give the guys a little bit of time to be themselves. But we've gotten into a little bit of a rhythm here where we can sit, have weekly meetings with them, even from afar. Our guys, we still connect. We have a big group chat. Our guys post what they're doing, and keeping us up to date and connecting with us pretty constantly. So it's kind of cool. It kind of opened a new door of we can be pretty connected even when we're not on campus together. Not that we weren't in the past, but we're definitely more so now than we normally would be at this time of year. So it's been kind of cool to see that as an unintended positive in the situation.
Jill, coaches, athletes so often talk about adversity. This is no different, right? To figure out what to do in this situation. We talked about it in our coaches chat last week. People so tied to their identity as athletes, and now you take the sport away, and how do people respond to that? you, like the other three coaches, not that far removed from being a player. As you think back on your playing days and now as a coach, what's the message to athletes? What are you telling them to try and help navigate this time and be ready to get back out there when they can?
I think it's a little different for the seniors. Talking, we have weekly conversations for the most part with our team. And I think that the hardest part has been trying to kind of get a message across to the seniors that are not returning to play lacrosse next year. And I think that's been the hardest part, and just kind of reassuring them about all the things that they have learned on the field and off the field at Manhattan is kind of going to prepare them for their careers as they move forward. And then from the lacrosse standpoint, for our freshmen, sophomores, and juniors and our incoming freshmen, is what are you doing right now to get better? And I think that we are huge on film. We've been using Huddle, thank goodness for Huddle, that we can clip together everything from goalie standpoints to the attacking end, to the midfield, to the defensive end. And how can each person get better by doing what we can right now? And I think film is huge for that. Doing the little things as well. A lot of people don't see, like specifically players, they don't see how standing in front of a goal and doing one-handed catches is going to be beneficial to them, because it seems tedious and not really beneficial. But the little things that you do in the off season is what's going to prepare you when you come back. And I think that coaches all across the board can kind of just reassure their student athletes that if you're doing the work when nobody's looking, this is another cliche statement, but if you're putting in the work when nobody's watching, we can guarantee you that it's going to show when you come back, and it's going to prove to everybody else that you're competing against that you put that time in.
I love that idea of asking the players, what are they doing to get better, even in this time where they can have practice and competition. Jenna, to kind of build off of that, with the discussions you're having with your team over Zoom or phone, however you're kind of connecting with them, have there been some examples of players on the team that are doing things to help make themselves better, to help make the group better, even if it's not a tangible lacrosse thing? Maybe it's a communication thing, a goal-setting thing, something that we need to help the team better.
Yes, definitely. We know that a lot of them have been checking in with each other, which is something that we really push for them to do, is to hold each other accountable. That's a big staple in our program. So they have accountability partners already lined up, but we know that they're communicating with each other regularly. They're a very close-knit team, so it makes our job a lot easier. And they've been following the workouts that Coach Mike has graciously provided for them, which is great. And they're also adding their own spin on things. We have a few girls training for a half marathon together, just to kind of keep things fun and interesting. And, that's been nice to kind of hear, and we're very supportive of them. As long as they're doing something right now, we are proud of them for that. This is a really challenging transition time for everyone. So as long as they're doing something every day, that's what we're really hoping for. So like Coach Jill said, a lot of the smaller things that they don't normally have time to focus on, like maybe rehabbing an injury that you had that you're already over, something like that. Focusing on the little things is really important for them right now.
John, similar question for the men's program, but things you've seen, or maybe things that you and the staff have requested of the athletes to work on that may or may not be heavily lacrosse related, but are beneficial to the team's growth.
Sure. I think one thing that was really cool this year, obviously it was my 5th year here, our day-to-day culture exploded in terms of how awesome it was and what we thought we could accomplish this year. So we're very unique. I think we have the most returning 5th years in the country with 6, which I think says a lot about what our guys think they can accomplish if they come back for another year, and sort of the growth we've had since we've been here. So to answer your question more directly, Greg, I think it's been pretty cool to see those guys take the lead on a lot of stuff. I think we have 2 unbelievable guys that are going to be 4-year captains, Luke Hansen and Kelson. I don't know how many 4-year captains there are in the country in any sport. So by them taking their 5th year, they'll be 4-year captains. And then we've got 4 other guys who evolved tremendously as leaders from September to now. And I think they're viewing this as, sort of a lifeline, a second opportunity to do my senior year and be more of a culture guy, impact guy off the field, and not just lean on the guys that have always been the captains. So where I'm really excited for our group is we've got guys coming out of the woodwork, it feels like, to promote and share and pump guys' tires and reach out to them. And, you know, a lot of times we're like, we got to reach out to so-and-so, and they're like, no, coach, I got it. You know, and I think that's really cool. The best teams are player led. So I think that's where we're excited about the group and about the growth we've seen in this time. And to touch one more thing, you know, we've talked a lot about whoever wins this extended off season is going to be the happiest in the spring of 2021. So I think our guys have done an unbelievable job of not only deciding to come back, but really try to make the most of it. I think it's been pretty cool to see.
That's a pretty awesome stat to have that many returning fifth years and to have the captains with that kind of longevity. It says a lot about the program. If you're just checking in, we're talking with the Manhattan College men's and women's lacrosse coaching staffs, Jenna Dingler, head coach for the women's program, Jill May, assistant coach, and then John Odierna, associate head coach. We'll also take questions if you have any in the Zoom chat, and one has just come through here from William Harkins that has to do with the rules of the sport, and talks about his love for the sport, but that the rules in women's lacrosse make it a little bit difficult to watch in comparison to the men's rules. This may be a sensitive topic depending on how you feel about the rules in the game, but Jenna, I'll start with you first. Thoughts on rules in women's lacrosse versus men's lacrosse? Would you like to see more similarity between the two? Do you like where the women's game is at? Your thoughts?
Well, thank you for participating. Great question. We have had a few big changes recently, and it does feel like the changes are not stopping. So a lot of adapting to these changes. Specifically, my favorite change has been the shot clock. I wish I had the opportunity to play with one. I think the first year after I left college, they implemented the shot clock. Such a great way to pick up the pace of the game. I do agree that it can get really dragged out. So they are looking to add in some rules that after goals, the huddles can only be 30 seconds before the next draw takes place. So that would definitely pick up the pace. I know they're trying to accommodate a lot of the game to be able to get TV time. So with that being said, the game needs to be around the same amount of time every time, but some of our games can take 2.5 hours, 3 hours. It's pretty unpredictable. So I do see us getting a little creative. There have been talk of potentially playing in quarters. I don't know if that would ever happen. I'm not really a fan of that. Jill, can you speak on any of the other rules that they've been talking about?
Sure. I can also agree with Jenna that the quarters thing, that's the one thing that I definitely do not agree with. It definitely changed the point of the game. But he does ask here that would you welcome, the transition closer to the men's rules? I think that's why people are having such a little bit of a hard time accepting that, because they don't want to change the game. But they are changing it to make it faster, to make it more, fun, I would like to say, for people to watch the game and to play the game as well. Wait, let's see what Marion chimes in here. Everyone know who watches the game with me. I would get thrown out of a game. It's a game of finesse. Very, very true, Marianne. Thank you for that. But, the IWLCA and the NCAA are definitely, it's constantly changing. And I think that over time, we're finally going to get to a point where it can kind of satisfy everybody across the board. I think that we're nowhere near that point yet, but we're going to get there eventually.
Thanks for that. And appreciate the questions as well. Keep those coming. If anyone has any additional questions, feel free to add them in the chat. Here's a fun question that we had pre-planned to ask each coach how their players would describe them as a coach. And we'll start first with John. If your players were here to join us, or maybe you've asked them in advance, how would they describe you as a coach?
Yeah, it's a good question. And yes, I know I tipped my hand. I reached out to one of our guys to help me out with this one. But a couple things that I think came to mind, and we brainstormed as a team. So we came up with a couple things. One, bring in the juice to practice. Always excited to be there, fired up, getting the guys going. I think that's a big thing. I like to joke around that at times I'm the morale coordinator with just high fives for everybody. So as much as that's fun and great, I think that's good. But more importantly, invested in the relationships with our guys and understanding the balance between having fun, but also knowing when it's time to get after it and get some stuff done. I think a really cool coaching adage I heard that applies to that is you have to be okay challenging your guys, but you have to support them equally or more than you challenge them. And that's something that I always try to do. I talked about my high school experience, and my high school coach was, if you mess up, I'm going to be the first voice you hear, but if you do something right, I'll be your loudest cheerleader. And I think at times that always stuck with me because I always appreciated it. And that's something that I try to embody a little bit. And then the other thing that Kelson wanted me to mention is that I do a good job of empowering them to make decisions and educating them on why we're doing certain things game to game so that they feel comfortable making those decisions in game. And the thing I always say, and I'll wrap up on this, is, it's not my defense that you play, it's your defense that I coach. And that's kind of my mindset. If you're going to make a mistake, that's fine. But we got to be able to work through it. You're not doing it being a pawn for me out there. You're doing it because you believe in what you're doing. And yeah, if I got to teach you and correct you, that's why I'm doing this. So it's kind of a cool part and a cool dynamic. So very rounded way to answer your question, but I hope I touched it.
No, it's great. Thanks, John. And a little plug for John and the defense. John coaches the defense, and they've been one of the top defenses in the country the last couple of years. So, especially in the man down area. So well done there to John and the Jaspers. Jenna, I'm not sure if you bring the juice like John does, but what is something players might say about you and the way you coach?
Well, I'm definitely taking a few of those tips, Jo, and writing these down because I really love the way that you're phrasing everything. I think that Jill and I together bring a sense of approachability, like she had mentioned earlier. I really make it an effort to create a positive environment. I don't think anyone can grow in a negative environment, so we really try to create positivity. We want them to be able to come into our office and not feel anxious or scared to talk to us about things. So really creating that sense of openness, understanding, easy to talk to, and realistic. So I definitely bring the juice to practice, in my opinion. And I think that being realistic on top of that is getting the job done. So a good balance between the two. Definitely still growing in my coaching years, and I'm excited to kind of understand a little bit more about how I am as a coach. And so.
Excellent. And if anyone's wondering, this is a metaphorical juice. The training staff provides the actual refreshments. So, more about that. Thanks for both of you talking about that. Jill, as part of Jenna's staff, describe how the athletes would talk about your role.
Sure. So one thing that was a little difficult for me coming in was that I came in November. So Jenna has established this, culture, and I was jumping right into it, and I kind of needed to, feel every player out, specifically on the attacking end, since I'm working with the offensive end. And one thing I can say is that the girls are very open to constructive criticism. They are always looking for that one-on-one feedback from you. They're always asking questions. And I'm going to go back to the approachable word because I think that's my best quality, is that I get down to business when you come and talk to us one-on-one, and I can address the situation with you, how well you're doing something, what some things that we could tweak, and kind of give them a little bit of a better background on why we're doing something. Like Jo was saying that, you're playing it, but why are we playing it? Or how are we playing it? And then talking to them as a whole and kind of implementing everything that we talk about one-on-one and how we can utilize it as a group.
We go back into the Zoom chat questions here. Tom Delaney with a question that was asked last week as well among our head coaches that joined us last week. But during this COVID-19 pandemic time, everyone very curious about recruiting and how that process is going and how you handle navigating all of this. John, we'll start back with you, but how has recruiting changed? What is it like during a pandemic as opposed to a regular year?
Yeah, I'll be honest, it's very challenging because of the restrictions with not being able to get out and see lacrosse this summer. So we can't really get those in-person evals, which is tough, but obviously it's the world we're living in right now. So the way it's really gone is you got to really manage your relationships with coaches you have from around the country and trust the people that you've trusted. Luckily between Coach Kelleher and myself and Coach Fraboni, we have almost 30 years in this thing combined. So we have a lot of avenues and coaches that trust us and are comfortable with us and will send us people that we know are great players. So we've been able to lean on some guys and really have them point us in the right direction. And I'm sure Coach Morantz, who's on this call, is probably tired of me sending student athletes over because I poke her daily, it feels like. So we've been active, but it is a challenge just knowing that we're not going to be able to get out and actually be on a field. And most importantly, we can't even coach. We can't get out there and work at camp and coach and interact with the student athletes one-on-one, which is my favorite part of the summer. So it's been challenging, but we're getting through it.
And then Jenna, for your program, what's been the adjustment to handling recruiting in this time period?
Well, definitely, just like John had said, it's been challenging. It's been quiet too. I think a lot of the prospective student athletes are really just kind of confused on how to move forward. So there's been a lot of great resources that our association has put out on really how to move forward and how to be recruited in this time. So we've been watching lots of film, really sifting through our 2022s that we're getting emails from, but we're really fortunate that we have a strong base for our 2021 class that we're pretty much wrapping up with. So really excited about that, and grateful for film.
Jill, I'm sure you're getting this question from players, and I'm curious for the perspective of a player in this time. They want to get recruited. They feel like they've gotten better. Now they don't get a chance to be seen, to get in front of coaches. Generally speaking, what are some things that you could tell a prospective player that is trying to make that that jump to that college level, things they could be doing in this moment to try and stand out when they don't have a game to show that was recent?
Sure. I mean, I think this is something that we're all going through right now, but we're huge on communication, and we love being able for prospective student athletes to reach out to us. And I think that's like the biggest thing when we are recruiting is thank you for reaching out to us, because that shows a lot, coming from a high school player. We respond with just always keeping a stick in your hand, always making sure that you're just, keeping your heart rate up first and foremost. And then going into the word like adversity is just walking around your room, like doing some off stick stuff, kind of things. We actually had a meeting with the Bronx Lacrosse players. I'm kind of going to go off topic here for a second, but Bronx Lacrosse players and their organization, we have a couple of the girls that live in apartments in the Bronx, and they were like, well, what can I do right now? And some of them want to play in college, and they were just we're really big on the stick work, always keeping your feet moving, stuff like that. And as coaches, one thing that we've been doing as well is webinar stuff. We've been doing a lot of webinars, trying to figure out, how can we go about this recruiting. And a lot of programs that are hosting these tournaments are turning over to online stuff. So they're going to be sending in videos of all the teams playing. And 4 things that we would say to the prospective student athletes when we're looking to recruit them is body language is huge for us, adversity, hustle, and teamwork.
That's good stuff. And thanks to Tom for that question. And that kind of leads us a bit more down the recruiting road. And Jill, you described some things that probably Jenna would totally agree with. But Jenna, to add to that, if you think about the type of athlete that you're recruiting, the full package, right? So not just the lacrosse stuff, but the academic side of things as well. What do you look for in an athlete that you're recruiting to come to join the Manhattan team?
So, I mean, I know that when athletes come in, we can work on stick work, we can work on your strength and conditioning. But what we really look for is character. We look at how they're responding to adversity on the field. That's why we love being out at these tournaments and these showcases to really see how they're responding. What does their body language tell us? Do they work well with their teammates? Are they getting really frustrated and showing it on the field? Are they asking their coach questions on the sidelines? These are all questions that we're asking ourselves from the opposite sideline as we're looking at this recruit. It's so important to see body language that shows that they want to be out there, they want to get better, and they want to be a team player. That's the type of Jasper that we're looking for. So I look for qualities that are going to make our program better, both on and off the field. Are they good communicators, like Jill had said? Are they organized in their recruiting process? So we have a big checklist that has nothing to do with physical ability as well. So we're looking at character so much, almost sometimes more so than actual physical ability.
John, similar thought on this, but I'll adjust it a little bit as I gather that you would agree with a lot of the things that Jill and Jenna were talking about when it comes to character and kind of the complete package, athletically, academically. Now an athlete's recruited, they get into college, they're part of the program, they want to do well, they want to be successful. Think back over your time as a player and as a coach. What are the things that athletes have done generally speaking, if there was a common trait or traits among the ones that were successful academically and athletically, and they graduated as seniors, and everyone felt like they did this correctly, what were some of the things those people did?
For sure. I think the biggest thing is we say like having a high motor, and that could be in all facets of life, right? I think high motor players and people have the highest ceilings. We'd rather have somebody that's good that will do anything to be great rather than the person that's great that is happy to be great. And ultimately, if you look at our biggest success story since I've been at Manhattan with Coach Kelleher, our best players have always been our hardest workers and our best students. So if I was to highlight one thing, it would be self-starters, people with high motors, and they want to get it right, and they're going to do it until they get it right with everything they approach.
If anyone has any other questions, feel free to add them in the chat. We've had some good ones thus far. We're talking with the coaches from Manhattan College men's and women's lacrosse. All of these coaches have had experience at different levels on coaching staffs in lacrosse. And we're going to talk now about kind of that transition between, let's say, an assistant to a head, maybe an assistant to an associate head coach as you kind of move up and down the ranks. Jenna, starting with you as a head coach now, when did you know that this was something that you were ready to do, that you're ready for that challenge and all the responsibility that comes with it?
I don't really think you ever necessarily know when you're ready. I think you just have to really trust in your experience and bring that with you and continue to learn. I mean, I truly feel like a sponge at times. I'm just taking in and filtering through what I think is going to help me become a successful coach. But I don't think there's any one right answer to being ready. It's definitely a leap. But if you have confidence in what you know and you always look to add to that knowledge, I definitely think you'll make it to the other side.
And then, Jill, you have a unique experience, as you had just talked about earlier on, a GA, then you get elevated to the head coach, then now an assistant coach role. So you've already been at that head coach position and now in the assistant coach role. How did you tackle the challenge of becoming a head coach? And then how do you work into your current position where you have had the ability to lead a program, but now you want to do the best job possible in this assistant role?
That's a really great question because I don't think many people are in my spot, to be honest, all across the lacrosse world. But as a head coach, I felt that you and your assistant coach, you're working together hand in hand all the time. And I think that's why when I was given the opportunity to come to Manhattan, I was so excited because I got to learn from somebody else in a coaching role now. So I think that's why Jen and I work so well together because we are constantly feeding off of each other. She's implementing something. I'm like, how can we, make this better? When I say something, she's like, oh, let's add this on. And I think that being able to have different opinions and mindsets on something and put them together as a whole in a coaching staff really kind of sets programs higher to those that are kind of, all right, I'm the head coach. This is what we're going to get done today. And the assistant kind of follows along. So I think that putting in two different perspectives and tying them together is what makes us pretty successful.
John, over to you. Again, having had different roles on coaching staffs, how do you describe when you're ready to kind of make that move up and take on a role that has more responsibility?
Sure. I think to Jenna's point, I don't know if you polled all the coaches in the country, they would know if they were ready or not when they became a head coach or if they're ready right now. So, I can't speak to that. But what I will say, and Coach Kelleher talks about this a lot, I think it's really important in your role as my role and Jill's role as assistants or associate head or whatever the title is. Your job is to make the head coach's life as easy as possible. And part of that is knowing what they want before they want it. And most importantly, being willing to take on any task. And I think that's something that since I started coaching, I've always approached it like I want to take on something else and just have another experience. If it's, I'll be the person that talks to admissions. I'll be the person that coaches the goalies. I didn't play goalie, but I'll try it. I'll talk to a goalie. If one year I got to coach offense when I was at Stevens Tech, it was awesome. And I think just finding a way to explore avenues to expand your knowledge base and expand your experience. So, am I ready to be a head coach? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'll ever know, but I do think that if I can equip myself with a bunch of tools and skills, I might have a chance someday.
Good stuff from all three. Thanks for that. I wanted to transition a bit into talking about the growth of lacrosse. And if you do a quick Google search or you follow college athletics, you'll see that lacrosse is a fast growing sport. It was one that for a long time was only in the Northeast. I think people associated it long ago with only Long Island or maybe the Baltimore area, that sort of thing. And now there are programs on the West Coast all across the board. Jenna, I'll start with you. And I think we talked about this a bit during basketball season when you joined us for one of the broadcasts. But there's this great opportunity for both programs to help not only be successful for Manhattan College, but to help further the lacrosse word, if you will, in New York City, an area where there's excellent exposure for any type of sport. Is that something that you feel a responsibility to do to try and help advance lacrosse and make it a bigger thing? You obviously love the game. How do you feel about that?
Absolutely. It's so important for us to continue spreading what we know about the game. And like Jill had mentioned earlier, we did a clinic with Bronx Lacrosse, which is youth lacrosse players, and they came to campus. And we provided that clinic to them free of charge because we just want to share with them our experiences and show them how much fun just being a part of a lacrosse team can be. And I think that is we got such a great response from that, from both our players and from them. I think that it was honestly more rewarding for our team to be able to work with youth and really share their knowledge with them. So it's definitely growing, and I'm really excited to see it continue to grow. We have a player coming in from Germany. She was on the women's national team for Germany, so she's coming in with our 2020 class. We're really excited to bring her in to see what kind of perspective she can show us, that she's maybe had something different that she's been learning out in Germany. So we're really excited to bring that unique twist to our team as well.
Jill, I'll move it over to you, and to kind of build off of that, you've been involved in lacrosse for a long time. If you look down the road 5-10 years, where would you love to see not only the Manhattan program be, but the sport that you like? Where could that go in the next 5-10 years?
In all honesty, I think that it should become a worldwide sport, and I think that it's slowly getting that way, but it's only in terms of worldwide, it's only for older student athletes, whether it's professional or if it's for high school. I think that building it, and it all starts with the coaches, to be honest. It's starting with us, and how can we get it out to students that are not really available to having those resources to play lacrosse. And I think that if we continue to make those resources available, I think that it's going to slowly become more lovable and addicting, and I think it's going to be able to spread all the way across the different countries. And personally, I'm a little biased here, but I think that it's definitely the best sport to be played, and I think that women's lacrosse and men's lacrosse is on their way up.
I would hope that you would all think that lacrosse is the very best sport in the world, so thanks for confirming that. John, on the men's side of things, you see it every year, the championship, they'll fill stadiums in Baltimore. Both championship games draw very well, men's and women's. Premier Lacrosse League, one of the leagues that's getting ready to restart. Your thoughts on the growth of the game and maybe where Manhattan College fits in trying to be another strong program that helps advance lacrosse in the United States?
For sure. I think it's a really cool time to be part of lacrosse. If you look at it like an industry, I think it's exploding. So it's a cool time to be a young coach in the sport. And to answer your question more directly, I'll speak to the men's side. I think there's, in Division I lacrosse, 74 Division I teams. So in terms of being Manhattan College and being one of 74 teams, is a really unique opportunity. A handful of years ago, we saw Loyola go and win a national championship, and they have a lot of the things that we have. And you walk around that campus, and our campus, they're pretty similar, and the schools are set up the same. And I think it's pretty cool to be able to elevate the Manhattan College brand and name as one of 75 teams in the country. 2 years ago, we had the University of Virginia come up and play us, which I think was a big deal because they're an ACC team, and it was a 7-5 or 8-5 game on a blustery March night where it was like 18 degrees, thanks to the 1,000 people that showed up that night. God bless you. I think it's been really cool to see the growth of this thing, specifically for our program, because there is so much room and you don't have to go that far in men's lacrosse. So and I think it's been cool to expand our brand in terms of recruiting we have a guy from Kansas on our team. We have guys from San Diego. We have the first Division I lacrosse player from Winnipeg, Manitoba is on our team. I think that's been really cool. When you're Manhattan College, you have a lot to offer. So we're in a great spot for lacrosse. Like you said, Long Island. And Jill, what's up? I'm going to call it the best lacrosse in the country because we're from there. Thank you. Appreciate the support. But we're so close to there. If you draw a 60-mile circle around our campus, you're hitting the major blue blood hotbeds. Then you add the fact that we're right outside the greatest city in the world and we could recruit just about anybody. So it's a pretty cool setup. And I think pro lacrosse is great. I'm excited for it, but I'm excited to watch our brand on the home front grow as a Division I men's program and being one of not that many that have it.
That's excellent, John, and appreciate everyone's
Greg,
thoughts.
you got me fired up. I'm screaming at my computer right now.
You sound like you're at a moderate volume, so I appreciate you letting us know that you're super energized right here. I appreciate that. Love everyone's love for lacrosse here. I'd expect nothing less. As we kind of wrap things up here, appreciate all the questions that have come in and the coaches taking their time. William Harkins added another question here about predictions for next year. I'm not sure anyone here wants to guarantee any conference championships or anything else, but it does give us a chance to kind of have a final thought from each coach about what you're excited about for next year and when you get back and you're able to get back with your team and have competition again. In general, I'll start with you. Just your thoughts as you're looking forward to competing again.
We have a lot of incoming talent, so I'm really excited to see what the new class can do and what our 3 returning seniors will do, with this sense of humility, like I talked about earlier, and gratitude to play the game. I think that we have a lot to prove in our conference. Last year, they came off of a really, really great season. So I'm excited to see what we can do with that knowledge and with the time spent now focusing on the little things to then implement that into our next year. Also, Coach Kelleher, great to see you, and Tommy.
Tommy.
Jill, do you want to build off of that and just what you and Jenna are working on for next season?
Sure. Once we ended in March, we kind of started preparing for the future and what are we doing and how are we going to get to the goals that we have set as coaches and what the girls have set for themselves. And, just putting in the extra work on your own, and the returning seniors that are going to be 5th years next year, I think they have a lot to prove for themselves as well as the team and everything that they have established here at Manhattan. So I'm really excited to see the work that they're going to put in for us.
Good stuff. And John, we'll end with you, your final monologue of the chat, just to pass it your way and your predictions, thoughts, feelings about next season.
Oh man, I got a lot of thoughts and feelings, but I'll try to keep it brief. I'm excited to have our 6 guys that are coming back. Again, I know I already touched it, so I won't beat it into the ground, but I think it's really cool that those guys want to come back and to put their lives on hold to spend one more year with us and chase what they came here for. And that's the MAC championship. If I remember correctly, in our compliance meeting, Marianne showed us a little ring case and said, this is the goal. We got to go get a ring. And for our guys, that's the goal, but we got to work every day towards it. And we're going to be bringing the juice whenever we're allowed back on a field with however many people are allowed to play. Maybe with shields, I don't know. We'll figure it out. But that's the goal. No predictions, but the goal every day is to do whatever we can to make a run at the MAC championship.
Fantastic stuff. Lacrosse programs well represented here from Manhattan College. Women's head coach Jenna Dingler, assistant coach Jill May, and then associate head coach of the men's program, John Odierna. Really appreciate you spending the time and looking forward to seeing all of your teams back on the field very, very soon.